national anthem by United States Army veteran, Mr. Ron Lawson. Ron? Michael? Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Thank you, Ron. We do want to thank everybody for coming out today. We've been blessed with this weather. We've been blessed with a lot of good things happening this last week. We were blessed with a great election, so we're all looking on a positive note with good weather. So I'd like to introduce a couple of our guests here today. We have our city manager, Mr. Bill Nicholas. Bill? Another person who supports our programs here is our fire chief, Mike Thomas. Mike? Thank you. We have former Mayor Jerry Smith, U.S. Army veteran. I'll get there, Larry. Larry is so impatient. Oh my God. And we also have our current mayor and U.S. Army veteran, Colin Barnes, Mayor Barnes. If I missed anybody, I apologize. But we do also want to recognize some other people here. We have people from the officers from the AMVETS. We have the commander, Mr. McCall, and the leader of the AMVETS Auxiliary, Paula McCall. Thank you for coming out. If I missed anybody, please let me know. I do apologize. I tell people I'm too young for Alzheimer's, but I have part-timers. I remember part of the stuff I'm supposed to do here. So today is a very important day for us. It's a day for us to remember our veterans. The people that have served our country are now in the mainstream of civilian life. But so key and so important that we become that vigilant group that help the young people understand what Veteran Day is all about. I was so honored to be able to speak to a group at Clinton Rosette, and for me to see these young people stand up and put their hand over their heart, oh my gosh, it gave me great feelings, especially when I understood of the entire faculty and staff at Clinton Rosette, there was only one veteran. So to transcend that for us as older veterans, to help the young people understand, it's so key and so important. Another person I want to make sure I introduce is one of our American Legion Auxiliary members, Cindy. Hufke, Cindy, how are you? Give Cindy a... For those of you who did not have the opportunity, last month we did a program for Be the One, which is one of the mainstream programs for the American Legion. Our auxiliary group at the Legion has taken on that project. Be the One is where we honor and make people aware of the 22 veterans every day that commit suicide. We need to be able to outreach. We need to be able to help those people. We need to be identified because, as we know, a lot of these people with PTSD, a lot of these people that kind of hide within themselves do have problems, and we need to be there for them. So I want to thank her for what she's doing. Also, she is involved with the Sweets for Two program. The auxiliary has taken that over, where we collect candy left over from the holiday, mostly Halloween, and sends it to the troops overseas. They have taken on that project, and so I really appreciate what they're doing for that. How much candy did you get last year? 1,100 pounds of candy. Isn't that wild? For all you skinny people, that's why you're skinny. You give the candy away. But one thing, and I will tell you, the story, and Cindy knows this story. We had a young man that went to one of the schools, and that school was going to donate candy. So he goes out and he collects like a whole basket full of candy, and he picked 3 pieces. He says the rest are going to the veterans. My gosh, that's good parenting. You don't get that very often. So, thank you for what we're doing. It's going to be a continuation forever of honoring our veterans is what we're doing right now. We have a guest speaker today who is a United States Navy veteran. He belongs to a variety of organizations, but he has agreed to come over and talk to us today. Larry Forsberg. Larry, would you come up, please? Larry served in the Navy, spent 18 months in Vietnam. He actually worked in the Morse code section, but at his age, he understood Morse code when he was growing up. Pretty much. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a nice round of applause to Mr. Larry Forsberg.
Thanks, Mike. I find that Veterans Day becomes a lot more humbling the older I get. I had the honor of taking an honor flight in 22, and for those of you who are eligible and they're doing Vietnam and later now, I would encourage you and your family to apply for an honor flight next year when they're doing them. It's a very humbling. I'd also like to say Terry Ryan from WLBK is back there, and he has been a fan of veterans for a long, long time, and he promotes our events and promotes us and what we go through and stuff like that. So I appreciate Terry for all his work. But you know, it took for me, and I think for a lot of Vietnam vets, it took me a long time to realize I was really a veteran. I was in Vietnam until 1970, from 68 to 70, and came home. We were all singular for the most part when we went there. We weren't part of companies or battalions or anything. We were all, the plane I got on, the first airplane ride I got on to from O'Hare, it ended up in Saigon. I was 20 years old, and I didn't know anybody else on the plane. I didn't know anybody else when I got there, and I've made friends that I've had for a long time, not on the airplane, but, and the ironic thing is, the only other singulars that left Vietnam were those who came home on airplanes because they were seeking further medical attention or they were killed in action. But it was a singular war for us, and on July 13th of 1986, so 16 years after I returned from my tour in Vietnam, there was an event in downtown Chicago called the Welcome Home Parade. And even up to that point, I had heard him talking about it on the radio and TV that this event was going to be taking place downtown. And it didn't resonate with me at that point. But my office was in Elgin at the time, and that morning I says, I think I'm going to go down there. Now I'm wearing a suit and a tie, and I went down to Chicago, found a place to park, and I got on the parade route. It was huge. Somebody said there was 1 million people in Chicago for this event. And I couldn't count that high, but there was sure a whole bunch of people there. And as I'm on the curb wearing my coat and tie, a unit went by, and it was the Mobile Riverine Force. And I was in the Mobile Riverine Force. And it was at that point I realized I was a veteran. Up until that time, I was having children, had a job, I was trying to exist in life and just carry on. And I hit that wall, and from then on, I knew I was a veteran, and if there was anything I could do to support my fellow veterans, I did it. And just a short little thing about, now I live in Clare now, I'm actually in the process of moving back to Sycamore, but my wife, her dad was on a ship in World War II, was torpedoed in the Indian Ocean, and he ended up being rescued, and he was brought to Australia. And my wife started tracking this event and all of the other survivors and the rescuers and stuff like that, and she found the name of Holderness. She was looking for Phil Holderness. She ended up going, thank God for the internet, she found a Holderness in Kansas City, and she just called him. And it ended up being the granddaughter for Phil Holderness. She explained why she was looking, and he says, you need to talk to my dad. My dad will put you in touch with my grandpa, who's in a VA retirement nursing home in St. Louis. She called Phil Holderness with the son's permission, and she's talking to Phil, who is starting to experience dementia. And as she's talking to him, he says, well, where are you at, young lady? Where are you from? She said, well, a small town, northern Illinois, near Sycamore. He goes, Sycamore? He says, I was born and raised in DeKalb. I lived at 307 Evans Street. He says, is Sully still there? So he remembered all those things from years past, and we went down to visit him a couple of times, and then we finally went down for his burial in the veteran cemetery there. But one of the things he said, which has further rejuvenated her as he's talking to her, he says, so what's your name? And she goes, Forsberg. And well, what was your dad's name? And she goes, Bill Holmes. Silence. And he comes back and he says, Bill Holmes was my best friend. He was on the same life raft as I was. And then just as an aside to that, my father-in-law died at 46. My mother-in-law remarried 16 years later. She marries a Navy veteran. He was a chief radioman, petty officer, and that's what I was doing. And so I asked Bob, I says, where were you at in April of 1945? He says, well, I was at a small submarine base in Fremantle, Australia, the same little base that her father was at. So my mother-in-law had both of her husbands, I envisioned, were drinking in the same bar before either one of them were her husband. So thank God, for the veterans who have gone before us, those who have given the ultimate sacrifice, and those of us that are still around in our families who have helped us and guided us as we go through this period of time and when we remember. And thank you all for being here this morning. It's a privilege.